Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Debra, who at the age of 28 had an interesting interaction with a physician who told her that she would be disabled in the next 4 years. Listen ahead, because what Debra explains should be nothing short of a miracle. But it turns out it might just be plain common sense. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm feeling much better that we had our little geography discussion, and I get in a little concept of, okay, how big you are. Are you near the lakes as well then?
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which are huge as well, which are probably bigger than the town that I live in. But
Yes.
so just I was looking at your website at the beginning, and there's a lovely little 3-minute introduction into where you found yourself when you were 28. But
Mm-hmm.
before I go into that, where did medicine start for you? Like when you were a child, were you the kid with a stethoscope sort of thing?
No, actually, I wasn't. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an attorney, and I remember my dad saying, "You can't be an attorney. You're not smart enough to be an attorney." And I went, "Okay."
Thanks,
But
Dad.
I was the rebel child. Yes, he was the one that pushed me all the time. I was the rebel child. And in families you get a little dysfunction sometimes. And back in my era, your parents kind of guided what you did. And so I remember being 16 and my mom saying, "You're going to go to beauty school and you're going to be a hairstylist." And I followed along and said, "Okay, I will." And I was not good at it at all. But I did it for a few years. And that's when I started realizing like I really enjoyed working with people, but I found myself always trying to help them. And I wanted to learn more and went back to study psychology and drug and alcohol addiction. And then later found myself in nursing school. And that's where I really found like that's where I fit in and that's where I needed to be. And so I started a longer process for me to get into medicine for sure.
Okay. So when you said you were a rebellious sort of child, was that just as in like just kind of playful competition with those around you?
Yeah, playful competition, which is still very competitive today. I actually have a friend who says, "Why do you always have to do what everybody else says? And you have to do it better than them and
Mm.
faster than them." And I'm like, "I don't know. It's just who I am." That and I love to challenge. So if somebody would say, "You can't do this," I would be like, "Oh, no. I can do this and I can do this better than you, faster than you, and I'm going to make money at it." And so I was that person that was going to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think initially that was maybe what attracted you to being an attorney?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Loving that challenge and taking that on and having that little bit of an argumentative personality there, you bet.
Do you think you might have won a high file case and then run up and high five the judge?
I could definitely see that for sure. Win that case that nobody thought you could win, and
Yeah,
you're just like, "Yes,
yeah,
that's it. I did
yeah.
it." Yeah.
And then just like celebrating in court to everybody, including the person who's going down.
Yeah, exactly.
So, um, so could you just for the like explain to everybody what happened when you were 28? Because that's kind of the significant fork in the road.
Yeah. So when I was 28, I was brand new as a nurse practitioner. I think I had only been practicing maybe about a year at that point, and I started not really feeling well. A lot of fatigue. I was having a lot of headaches. I was getting a lot of numbness and tingling, weird symptoms, muscle pain. And I was starting out. I had two young kids at the time. My third was on the way or just born at that point. I was burning the candle at both ends. working, going to school, raising a family, doing all the things that traditional Americans do. And we think it's so wonderful. And now we think it's not. But back then it was the thing to do. And I remember sitting down one day and looking at all my symptoms and going, okay, I'm going to see my doctor, and I'm either going to come out with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or a diagnosis of MS. And I went to see him, and it was a gorgeous day here. It was 90 degrees in August. And I went in with a long sleeve shirt on and a fleece jacket and sat in the office. They came in, they took my temperature, and he's like, something doesn't seem right with this thermometer. Let me come back. So he comes back, takes it again, still doesn't have a good temperature, comes back with a third thermometer. And I finally said, what are you getting as a temperature? And he's like, 95. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably about right. And he's like, that can't be right. And I'm like, dude, it's 90 degrees outside. Do you see how I'm dressed? I'm cold all the time. And he's like, well, I think the thermometer's broke. We'll tell the doctor. The doctor comes in, never addresses my body temperature or how I'm dressed, tells me my symptoms, looks at me and says, I'm unfortunate to tell you that you have something called fibromyalgia. We don't know what to do with this. And here's a prescription for some antidepressants. And here's a prescription for narcotics. Go home, have a great life, and plan to be disabled in 4 years. And I was taken back. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm 28 years old. You're nuts. And I walked out to my car sobbing, going, what am I going to do? I just graduated as a nurse practitioner. I'm this young practitioner, young mom, and you just gave me a life sentence and sent me on my way. And so luckily at that point in my life, I had what I called back then my wacky friends. And that's how we were all looked at, the quacks, the wacky friends. My husband would say, you're witchcrafty friends. And I called my friends and said, okay, one of you have to know somebody that knows something about this. And back then, we didn't know much about fibromyalgia back then. And I said, you guys have to know somebody. And they said, yes, we do. Come with us. We'll teach you. And that was my first introduction to what we now call holistic or integrative medicine, because these were the people that taught me about herbs and taught me about diet and lifestyle and nutrition. And whether we want to say I was truly diagnosed correctly or not, I have no symptoms of fibromyalgia at all anymore. I did get finally diagnosed with a thyroid condition, which was obvious at that point. And that was the whole introduction to me learning about naturopathic medicine.
How much of it with that doctor do you think he was just bored of people?
That's a great question. I think he was doing what he was trained to do, but it wasn't what a patient needed to have. Like there could have been more compassion. There could have been more discussion around it. I think, at the time we were just learning about fibromyalgia and we really didn't know anything. And it could have been a better delivery. For me, it worked out great because I'm that rebel person that said, I'm going to prove to you that I don't have this and I'm not going to be disabled. But had I not had that personality, I could see that taking a completely different turn for a client. And truly now they think they're going to be disabled and there's nothing for them. And unfortunately, I've treated and worked with many women over the last 25 years who've had that scenario happen to them. And it was a life sentence and destroyed their life. And they became disabled and they never had anything healthy or good come out of that.
Because the reason I asked that is you said something at the beginning where you were kind of expected as you were growing up to just go into the business, the job that you were expected to do. Mm-hmm. And I would say there was certainly a period in time post-war right up and probably until the 90s. Certainly up until the 80s, where you kind of followed a family footsteps. And many of those doctors maybe were not following a passion were passionate about textbook medicine, but were not passionate about people. And, like you said, when you were talking about one of the things you learned when you were doing the beauty salon stuff is how much you love helping people. And that led you down a path to help people, even when at the very beginning as a child and you wanted to be an attorney. You can't be an attorney without helping somebody. So that it's kind of there's almost a foundation of service to outside of yourself to other people.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I wonder how many of the medical practitioners didn't have that in them. Not that they weren't good textbook doctors, but they were bored of people. They just, yeah, the book says this, so we can tick that box. And the reason I'm pondering on this probably more than I should be is the fact they just sent you out the door with, by the way, your life is fucked.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Thank you for your
Yeah.
medical forms. And instead of, hey, this might not be good, even if you didn't know any options, he didn't seem to give a shit about how that might have impacted on you.
Yeah, and I would agree. And that's exactly how I felt at the time too. And needless to say, I never saw that practitioner again. Because there wasn't that compassion
Yeah.
that we don't know where this is going to go. This could destroy your life, but let's look at, here's some options, or let's connect you with somebody that can help you talk through, do some talk
Yeah.
therapy, a therapist, something that is going to help you navigate your new life. There was none of that.
Because sometimes it's as simple as saying, do you know what? I'm quite clumsy and I'm not a great person to talk to. Before you leave, is there somebody I can ring for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just, yeah. Do you remember the way out? It's the way you came in.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems a bit harsh
Yeah.
when you just sold somebody. In 4 years' time, you're going to be a bit disabled. Oh, by the way, what's for lunch?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And it's sad. And I feel bad for doctors these days because they have to see so many people and they're so busy. They don't have time to deliver that compassion like we used to be able to do. I feel bad for them in that position. But in the same token, when you have to tell somebody some bad news, if you could do it with some compassion, it lands on that person a lot better
Yeah.
than to be cold hearted. And I get that sometimes you have to build that wall up too, because it hurts you to have to tell
Yeah,
people
it does.
day in and day out. I get that, but you're still human. And you took a job that meant you were going to have to give bad news to people eventually. And you've got to find a way to deliver that in a better message.
So, and I suppose that leads us nicely to the message that you now deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. I deliver a lot of bad news to people every day because I'm dealing with chronic illnesses. And some people will say, no, Deb, you don't. You deliver good news because you deliver answers to questions that we've had for a long time and haven't been able to find those answers to explain why we feel bad. So many of my clients are happy that we can find answers for them. But sometimes that means those answers aren't the best answers. And it's not a death sentence by any means for them. It just means that I can't fix you with one pill and in a week. I can fix you with a lifestyle change. I can fix you with herbs and medicines, but it's going to take 1 to 5 years before you're completely better. And for a lot of people, that's a long time. And for other people, they're like, great, that's fine, because I've been sick for 20 years. So there's an end in sight. And it really depends on how that person feels. But this is really where coming in and knowing your person before you tell them that information and how you deliver that can make all the difference in the world on how they feel about what they're going into.
It's interesting. When I, so the podcast is kind of a side project, for want of a better term, and that's a really bad way to describe it. But it's not something I do full time. My main job is I work in head injury rehabilitation. I run a couple of care teams, and I'm also a hypnotherapist. And one of my a kind of avenue I ended up going down when I qualified as a hypnotherapist by accident is amongst people that I was doing who, when I first qualified a couple of years ago, you need people to let you hypnotize them so you can practice and build up a skill set of induction. And whilst doing this, a couple of the people I started working, one had fibromyalgia and one had really serious celiac. And I started experimenting with just reducing stress, just actually the subconscious mind just letting go of all of the stress. I've not cured anybody, but I've reduced everybody down to 0 symptoms.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. What I haven't been able to establish is the most they seem to be able to go between treatments is, and depending on what's going on in their life, is about 4 to 6 weeks, and then symptoms can start reappearing. And I have loads of theories, none of which, I've not done like a clinical trial to, and I'm not in a position to, but I think it factors on the way I describe it to people is the physical body can cope with an inordinate amount of stress, but the subconscious or the mind, whichever way people want to go down, and I'm happy for anyone to correct me, is on a scale of 1 to 10, once you get past a stress level of 10, your body will display that in some form of physical symptom. And that's your brain's way of saying, we're not doing this anymore, so I'm going to make you ill. And people are like, and what I notice is people function way above 10. And when they say, like, I'm at 12, I'm at 13, no, 10 is the limit. After that, it's physical symptoms. And what I sort of noticed is most people are waking up at a stress level of 6 or 7 in the morning because of their lifestyle and their job, and their, all probably similar to all the people you see coming into your clinic and stuff. And just on the route to your clinic, somebody cut them up and told them what they thought of them. And then they got into your clinic, realized they hadn't filled out a form correctly or something. But by the time they've got home, they're already at 10. And then their kids come home and tell them about a bad day at school, and you can't go above 10. So suddenly you start developing anxiety, celiac, fibromyalgia. Do you know what I mean? Your body just has to shut itself down because it needs a break from that kind of cortisol, the fight or flight. Everything from the adrenal glands, to your thyroid are just in overdrive. Your liver, your kidneys, they're all just like, look, we can't keep doing this. It's like a race engine at full revs all the time. But you think you're okay because you're drinking a bottle of wine, you're drinking coffee, you're doing whatever. But your body's like, no. We need a proper rest.
Yeah. I think you're spot on with that. And we see that a lot in our practice as well. And everybody today is stressed. I mean, we burn the candle at both ends. We financial stress, physical stress, family stress. If you're in that 40 to 50 year age group, you've got kids, you've got parents you're taking care of. Like, it just never stops for people. And you're absolutely right. Eventually the body just spills over and says, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And it sends small signals. And I'll tell patients that you had small signals when it first started. You just ignored them and pushed through. And now your body's talking louder and louder and louder because it's forcing you now to do something.
Because I explain to people, if you think about the human body, it hasn't evolved much in 2 million years. And the operating system inside our brain hasn't changed in 2 million years. We haven't adapted to modern life the way we think we have. We are an incredibly adaptive species. As a species, we're phenomenally adapted. But the adaptation where we think we are, just no. We have 2 million years where nothing changed much. And then about the last 500-600 years, we've just gone up. And then if you take the last 30 years from the internet, that's just gone into the stratosphere. But the line before that was just level. It's just like we literally jumped from cooking food, Stone Age tools, Bronze Age. You know what I mean? It's like thousands of years, and the blips are tiny. And then from industrial agriculture to the Industrial Revolution to the internet, it's just stratosphere.
Skyrocketed, yes.
But and I say to people, if you've got the latest iPhone, try switching on an iPhone 4, because that's the closest comparison I can give you. And try running the iPhone 4 and the apps today. It just shuts down. And you try and explain to people that the operating system you have in your brain really understood the difference between fight and flight. But when it woke up in the morning, it knew a couple of things. I know how to hunt and I need to get food.
Hmm.
and it knew how to take control of those scenarios and those situations. It knew when it had to do something and what was required. Whereas now you're getting angry because you don't like a politician, and your brain doesn't register. Maybe I'll just turn the TV off and not listen to it, and go down the polling booth when I'm
Right.
ready and just vote for whoever I want. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll just turn my phone off. Maybe I'll just go and
Yeah.
read a fantasy book so I'm not in this world. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, we have no way to disconnect anymore. We're sleeping with our iPhones or our Androids next to the bed, and as soon as you wake up, you're reaching forward to see who's messaged you.
mm,
And it's usually never anything good. It's not like, "Good morning, beautiful. Glad you're having a great day." It's
yeah,
usually, "Hey, this is fucked up. This happened,
yeah,
that
yeah.
happened. I need you here 10 minutes ago, blah, blah, blah." Your bank account's overdrawn, somebody hacked your card, there's always something that before you even get out of bed, you're going, "Oh my God, I've got all these things." And there's not that even time to get up, enjoy, look outside, see what's going on,
Well,
ground yourself. None
yeah,
of that.
because it's funny. I thought about that recently. I was just like, do you know what? The first thing I do every morning is pick up my phone, and I was
Hmm.
like, you got to stop doing that. And then it's like, you can't stop doing that because your alarm is on your phone now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, And I thought, do you know what? I'll get an alarm clock. But then I also realised I often wake up largely due to my dog, but before my alarm goes off. So
Hmm.
I'll be in the middle of walking the dog when the alarm on my phone goes off. So I'll forget to set off. Whereas if I had an alarm clock at home in my bedroom, that would be buzzing, waking up the entire household. So it's
Yes.
just, oh, I'm stuck with my phone. I can't leave my phone downstairs. I can't do this. I can't.
Yeah, we're attached to them. We
Yeah.
really are. And now we have, grounding bed sheets
Oh,
because we're not grounding ourselves like we used to do outdoors. We have to buy things to put them on our beds to ground them to the electrical current so that we can feel grounded and we can feel somewhat calmer these days.
it's interesting. I've seen these come about again lately. I don't know if
Hmm.
it's just an internet thing. And I remember about 20 years ago, people talking about grounding. And briefly, I got into the habit of walking around in bare feet outside.
Hmm.
I do sometimes wonder, for about 2 weeks every year, I go surfing. And I do wonder if one of the reasons I feel so much better is because I'm just grounded.
Just grounded,
Because I'm just
exactly.
walking around in bare feet for almost 2 weeks, or floating in
Yep.
water, which is a wonderful conductor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know much about grounding sheets in terms of I've
Hmm.
never tried one or no or no, and I don't know anyone that owns one. Are they really as good as people say they are?
Some of them are. Some of them are very high quality. I remember the first thing I did for grounding about 20 years ago was magnets on my bed.
Okay.
And they came from Canada. They were about an inch and a half thick. They weigh over 500 pounds. And you put them between the mattress and the box spring, and it is supposed to ground you, and it helps to detoxify you. And I remember getting them. They were super expensive, and my husband's like, "This is nuts. These things aren't going to do anything." And I said, "Well, let's just sleep on them for a week and see what happens." And so we did, and we were like, "I don't know that we feel anything different. Let's take them off," because we had a window of period of time to send them back. We took them off, and then first night we looked at each other and said, "Oh my gosh, these things are actually doing something. I slept better. I don't have so much pain when I wake up. I'm not waking up with a headache. I feel better. I'm not as restless." Put them back on the bed. The next night we slept like babies again. And it was one of those things where you have to definitely try them to see. Thank goodness the sheets don't cost what the magnets costed back then. And I still have those magnets on a bed that I have. But the sheets can do a lot for people, especially if you're constantly around the Wi-Fi and the computers and all the electrical things, the cell towers. You need something that can ground you and get rid of some of that electromagnetic field.
So how does it work then? Do they just, because I take it there's no wires going outside of the house?
No, they get plugged into your outlet and to the grounding part of your outlet. So, like your outlet has the two or three prongs. This has one prong and it goes into that bottom prong for grounding. And you just plug it in, and you can do sheets and you can do pillowcases, and then that sets the grounding through those sheets. They have a little wire that gets attached to them.
Okay. I might try that.
Yeah.
You're the first person I've been able to speak to who's actually done that.
Yeah.
So how did you grow your practice?
My practice grew totally by word of mouth. I started out about 27 years ago. I'm going to age myself here. I always gauge this on how old my youngest son is. So I started out about 27 years ago, actually changed from traditional medicine. I started as a women's health nurse practitioner, very conventional until I got sick myself, and then started to learn all about integrative and natural medicine. I went to naturopathic medical school. Studied that, joined a practice that had two medical doctors in it that at that time were practicing integrative medicine. And I started learning from them, adding different things that I had learned from my colleagues, and started treating all of the people that had been everywhere that nobody could fix. And that's really where we started out and started attracting that population of people. Started learning a lot. I already being a women's health nurse practitioner, I knew a lot about hormone therapy, and I'd worked infertility for many years as a nurse. So I understood female hormones very, very well and worked with menopausal women. And as I started to grow that part of my practice just exploded. And today I have 4 other practitioners that work for me, and we have over 12,000 patients in our practice.
What is it you do practice in? I realise we haven't discussed that bit yet.
Yeah. So we practice an integrative approach to healing, and we treat patients that have tick-borne disease, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, treat a lot of neurological issues. So misdiagnosed MS, ALS, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury. We optimize their hormones and get them to a place where their brain can function better. Because as you know, when you have traumatic brain injury, it damages the pituitary, and that then damages the rest of the hormones in the body as well. So we really work with those people to help them optimize their hormonal system. One of our practitioners works with autism and something called PANS PANDAS for kids that suffer from severe anxiety. So we do a really wide approach to helping our clients, and we leave no stone unturned when we're trying to figure out what's going on for them.
Where do you sit? I see a lot of research coming through where they talk about sugar and carbohydrates being a huge cause of a lot of brain sort of degenerative diseases.
Absolutely. I mean, it is very inflammatory to the brain. And then you tack on to that an infection of some kind or an exposure to mold, and then you add those carbohydrates and those artificial sweeteners and even natural sweeteners to the degree that we eat them today, that we've never eaten them before. You and I as kids didn't have that. You know, you had a treat once a week. You had like a little, 2-ounce glass of pop, and that's what you got. You weren't drinking 32 ounces multiple times a day like kids drink today. And so I think the sugars and carbs are very problematic for us. They're very toxic to our brains, and that creates a lot of problems for us with memory and attention deficit and focus, all of that.
I remember seeing, it's like a history report a couple of years ago. It was something random, like, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it was a huge difference. But it was something like the amount of sugar that somebody would consume 300 years ago is what somebody would in like a month or a year or something is what you and I would consume in a day today.
Yeah.
And
yeah, everything has it. Yeah, we forget things like, ketchup, condiments, ketchup and mustard and relish. They put sugar in all of that. Spaghetti sauce has sugar in it. Why are we putting sugar in these things? And it's partially because our taste buds have changed so much. We've been exposed to so much sugar that now if we don't have that really sweet taste, we don't like it. And it's everywhere. It's sad.
And of course the problem is back to this thing, we were never designed to live off sugar.
No, never. Yeah, you need your proteins, you need your fat, especially for healthy brain function. And if you want to be lean, you need to have that fat and that protein. But we've become this person that lives on carbs. And in the UK, I assume it's very similar to us in some respects. The crappiest food we have is the least expensive
Oh yeah,
food.
definitely. Definitely.
So people who are living on a budget oftentimes don't have a choice to eat the foods that are junk because that's all they can afford, unfortunately.
And I think as well, the other thing that we suffer from, the same as the States, is the food that is labelled as healthy just isn't.
Yeah, it's not.
You know,
Mm-mm.
and they'll put all of this. We have all of these badge systems and traffic lights and codes and all of this, and you're like, there's nothing in there that's healthy at all.
No, nothing. And now we genetically modify foods and we're growing foods to build faster and bigger and more. And those foods are terrible for us too. And we're only beginning to see the problems that those foods are going to cause on our health. But we're keeping it very quiet. We don't want people to know because we want them to buy this
Yeah,
crap that they're, creating for us.
I think, what was it? Somebody was telling me the other day they've started calling. I'm trying to think. It's not Parkinson's. It's not MS. I think it's Alzheimer's. They're starting to label it type 3 diabetes.
Yes, it is Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes. Mm-hmm.
And I was just like,
Yeah, that sugar gets into that brain and creates so much inflammation. And even I see doctors who will say, "Oh, your glucose, your sugar levels at like 110, it's borderline." The cutoff is 99. Where do we now think that 110 is an acceptable level? In our integrative world, we want to see somebody's blood glucose less than 90, ideally. And traditional medicine is letting them walk around at 110 and saying that's perfectly fine, wondering we have all these Alzheimer's at a young age. Well, because their blood sugars are high, they're in their 30s, 40s, or even in their teens these days, for God's sake. It's getting worse and worse the younger they are.
I do find it strange that we have this weird thing going on at the moment where male testosterone levels are at an all-time low.
All-time low.
And bearing in mind, you and I are a generation where men and women smoked and drank and ate fats and were far healthier. And
absolutely,
respectfully to the 60s, 70s and 80s men, those guys had testosterone.
Yes, they did.
And they had a lifestyle that was labelled by today's standards as unhealthy. And today's, where they say this is a healthy lifestyle, they have the lowest testosterone levels measured in history. And people
I have
like this is okay.
I have never in my career seen so many 20-year-olds with testosterone levels that are lower than my 70-year-olds as I do today. I'm seeing 20-year-olds with a testosterone level of 200 or less sometimes, but 200, 250. These guys should be 800, 900 minimum for a testosterone level. And they're at 200 and trying to function. I don't know how they're doing it. I really don't. And it's horrible. And you ask some of the experts of why do we see this happening? And we can come up with some ideas, head trauma. Well, I can argue that our generation had way more head trauma. We rode bicycles and did all kinds of things with no helmets,
Yeah, but when we were kids, if you didn't know how to bounce, you died.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
We fell out of trees. We fell off walls. We climbed houses. It was not unusual to come home and find kids on a roof.
Yes, exactly.
40 foot up a tree. Right.
Yes. And now you can't ride a tricycle without knee pads and elbow pads and a helmet,
Yes.
It's very different. And I the only thing I can contribute to these low testosterones in these young men is the chemicals that we are exposing these kids to these days is so high. Electromagnetic field, all of the EMF that we get off of the Wi-Fi and the phones and everything else has to be disrupting their body's ability to make testosterone.
I think as well, and again, I have no evidence of this, but I do think along with all of those things, and I'm biased because obviously I focus on things like hypnosis and how the mind reacts to things. I do think as well, it's just this overprotection of young men, young boys, where, you know, like when I was a kid, you had nothing else to do other than play fight. And to just roll around with everybody, getting and I'm not condoning bullying in any way, shape, or form, but you had to learn to take a few knocks, and it taught you to be like you were saying when you were a child. That competitiveness is, oh, you think you're going to beat me? Okay, well, let's see how prepared you are to take that challenge on. You know, if you're going to climb, you think you can climb to the top of the tree. Well, I'll get there before you. You know, if you think you can fall out of the tree, I'll fall out faster. And but it would be like, oh right, so you walk 5 miles. Well, tomorrow I'm going to walk 10. And but you used to play fight. You used to run around. You used to just simple games like we used to have a game. I'm sure you had something, probably just a different name. Well, you have dodgeball. You had dodgeball.
Yes.
Did you know what I mean? Which is basically, if you can't move fast enough, you're getting hurt. And we
you're getting hit with the ball.
Yeah. And we used to have a game when I was a kid growing up, was called, we used to call it British Bulldog. It was basically one person is at one end and everyone else is at the other, and you have to keep running backwards and forwards, and if you get caught or tagged, held down, you then had to join that side until it's just 1 against 20, and everyone,
oh gosh.
yeah. And if you can run through the line, you survive, but the idea is to pin that person to the floor. And of course, the more of you there are, the bigger the group gets that eventually pins the last person down.
Right.
But I'm sure all of that running, all that exhilaration, that told the brain you have to be competitive on at a cell level, right deep down inside your DNA. We need to switch on everything, make sure it's firing, because there's a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, you had to be resilient. And that's what the body is meant to do. It knows how to do that. But today, how resilient do you have to be if you're just sitting in front of the computer on the phone and you have nothing to be afraid of, nothing to have to strive for? I don't know. I'm saddened by what is going to happen in the next generation, and how are we going to survive? We talk about this a lot in the US. How are we going to have men that are going to join our military? We have women that have more testosterone than men in this country, and they're tougher than them. And that's not all men. I'm glad to see there's still manly men, because I like manly men. But we really do need to be taking this seriously and start looking at this, because this can destroy countries when we don't have
100%.
people that can stand up to things.
100%. This we have some huge problems in the UK at the moment, and they're certainly not getting better. But you can't explain to somebody. I remember experiencing this on one level, but I heard it first as a sports analogy, and it was sort of back in the day. They wanted to know why Mexican boxers were so good and the American boxers weren't as good as they used to be. And somebody pointed out that, well, that's because those Mexican boxers would, when they growing up in poverty, they've got to fight. So from the day they're born, they're hungry. And if they can't defend themselves in their neighborhood, all the kids can steal anything they've got. If you've got it, it's mine, because you can't fight for yourself. And they said America used to be like that, but it becomes softer and softer as they get older and older. And I remember 15 years ago, I used to go to Moscow, and I had a girlfriend, and she was Russian, and we used to go to Moscow, and it was something I learned about the Eastern Europeans because of the Soviet Union and coming out of the communism and stuff like that. They had to fight for everything. And those guys were mentally just tough. And that was because if you went to school in a new pair of trainers, if you couldn't stick up for yourself, you were coming home in bare feet. And they taught these guys. And somebody said to me, don't think you're going to handle those guys. And I experienced it when I was over there. Some of those guys had a look in your eye, and in their eye, and I was just like, these are not people you mess about with. Because some of these guys, I remember being in this restaurant, and there was this bodyguard there, and it's not that they were all armed, because my dad was in the army. I grew up around guns. We had shotguns as kids and stuff like that. But the way that guy, and he wasn't being rude or anything like that. He's just scanning the room, doing his job as a bodyguard at a kid's party, and he's fully armed up, and you could tell he'd killed people, and probably with his bare hands. And I wasn't sure if he'd done
Yeah.
it out of necessity or just for fun. Do you know what I mean? He's just like, you know what I mean? And you talk about
Yeah.
testosterone levels, you know, you like to think you're good, and then you think, damn, that guy's, he's on a different level.
Yeah.
You know?
Different level. Exactly.
You know,
Different level.
when you look into the way they were enlisted in conscription and how these guys survived the Russian army and stuff like that, you had to be
Yeah.
hard as nails to succeed.
You did. You
And
do. I mean, and unfortunately, I think, fortunately or unfortunately, some people are going to listen to us and think this is not not a conversation to have, but I'm glad we're having this conversation because you have to survive. There will be bad times coming for your country, for our country. It is inevitable to happen again. History repeats itself. And if you're not strong, you will not survive this. Being whatever sex you are, you have to find a way to be strong.
I say to people all the time, and that the thing that we're not doing, we're not preparing people for, is like testosterone levels is dropping. I mean, and that's before you start getting into the problems we're going to have with AI sex robots. Right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Because that's just going to,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, that'll solve loads of problems. No, that's going to cause 100 problems, you know. Because on both sides, because once both sides realise I don't even need to deal with you, we're just going to go completely separate ways. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah. And then how do you deal with people at that point? Life is all about dealing with people.
Yeah. And the thing that people, these kids today, like, you know, they're just not allowed to suffer in any way, shape or form. And it's like, wait until somebody breaks your heart. Wait until your best friend gets killed in a car accident, or your best friend dies of an illness when you're 16, 17, 18, or in your 20s. Wait until you get that job that you worked your ass off for, did really well for, and somebody makes you redundant. You know, there will be absolute hardships in life. You know? And you can't even cope with the fact that somebody didn't like your t-shirt.
Yeah, right. I don't like the saying on your t-shirt. Yeah, I mean, every day, like there is not a day that goes by in my world, you know, managing 15 staff and taking care of 8,000 patients a year, you know, that there is not some kind of problem that we're dealing with. And you have to put out fires all day long. That's life. That's what you do. I thank my parents every day for not being soft and not giving me everything that I wanted and saying, go work for it, figure out how to do it. Because had I not done that as a kid, I don't think I could be running the business that I run today, because I would have given up a long time ago saying, this is too hard. There's too many problems. It's never easy. And granted, yes, there are days I say that, but I wake up every day and I do it again. And I look for the next thing we can add and the next thing we can do. And knowing that the next thing I add is going to bring problems somewhere down the road or challenges, I still am willing to take the chance to implement it. What about the kids that have never had challenges like you've talked about? They're upset they've got a name on their shirt and somebody didn't like it. How are they going to take risks? How are they going to deal with the challenges? I don't understand how that's going to happen.
And the worst thing as well, which you can't prepare kids for, is, it's great, but wait until you're 20 and those kids that you were at school with, you haven't seen them for 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They've long disappeared. They're wallowing in their own puddle of self-pity and piss. And none of you talk to each other anymore. None of you have got jobs and your parents are tired of supporting you. And nobody's giving you life skills to just go and work 2 or 3 jobs. You know, and you say to somebody, it's like, I'm short of money. Well, get a job. I've got a job. We'll get a second job. And it's just like,
no, what do you mean? Yeah,
I already work. Well, you don't have a good enough job that pays well. You know, it's, you know, like respectfully, in the middle of being told you're going to be disabled for 4 years, in 4 years' time, you went and built a medical practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes when someone chucks reality, you're like, yeah, that doesn't suit me, so fuck you. I'm not doing that.
That's right. Yeah, that's not what I had planned.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, it's true, isn't it? Do you know, a doctor
Yeah.
says to you, in 4 years' time, you're going to be disabled, and you
Hmm.
were like, oh no, that doesn't work for me
Mm-mm.
today. Sorry. And you went off and
Yeah,
built a medical
sorry.
practice. You know, 20 odd years later, or
Yeah.
30 years later, you've got a medical practice, 15 staff, to know what I mean? And you treat
Yeah.
12,000 people a year. Well, you're supposed to be disabled.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be disabled.
But
Hmm.
like you said, but somebody told you
Yeah.
once. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But somebody told you
No, that's
once,
good.
you know, you got to be tougher than
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't have somebody that tells you that, how do you get past that? I literally see women that were told the same thing at the same age that I am, and they have been disabled. And in the time frame that they were told, 4 years, they were disabled. They just curled up in a ball because somebody told them this at some point, that this was what their life was going to be, and they accepted it. You can't accept that. You
Yeah,
cannot. You have to refuse to accept the answers that you're given and work your ass off to find a way to get around it. I grew up as a child. My mom worked with a gentleman that was disabled. He was in a wheelchair. He had horrible polio as a kid, and he was working every day in a wheelchair, and he drove his own car. He did his own thing and had a life, and he built a life for himself within the confines of what he could do. But he had a job. He did everything. He was one of those same people that said, no, I'm not going to do this. You can tell me I'm limited, but I'm going to still work. I'm going to still do what I need to do.
um,
We all have that choice.
yeah, and he probably still had a higher testosterone level than today's kids.
Probably. Yeah, exactly.
But it is
Yeah.
because you try and explain to these people, look, once you hit your 20s and you become an adult, all of those people that you think you know, they're going to get their own lives, and you're going to become isolated because
Yeah.
all you've done is complain. All of you as a group have complained, and you're suddenly
Hmm.
going to realize adults don't care.
No, they don't.
You know, I care about, you know, you and I are having a fantastic interaction, and I'm going to think about this afterwards, and I'm going to be very grateful because I've really enjoyed the conversation. But at some point, you and I stop caring on a practical level
Hmm.
because you've got your
Absolutely.
life to go ahead, and you've got
Hmm.
your family, you've got your kids, you've got the people that work under you, the people that work with you, you got your patients,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm going to go back to work, and
Yeah.
and in that moment, well, that I have to care about this, and what we don't do is tolerate people who are just complaining about their lives all the time, doing nothing about it. We're just like, look, that's great, but I'm too busy to deal with your shit. I've got my own
Right.
stuff, and there's
Yep.
things I have to prioritize what I can give time to that I have to care about.
Hmm.
And it's not that
That's exactly right.
it's not that we're not compassionate, but I can't wallow in your puddle. You've got to figure your own life out. I can give you
Yeah.
guidance. I can tell you how I did it. I can tell you how I did this. I can
Hmm.
tell you how I done that. But I can't do it for you. Do you know what I mean? And like I
Yeah.
said, and I will go back to, at 28 years of age, you were told you would be disabled in 4 years.
Hmm.
But you were just like, and that was by not just a doctor, but the senior doctor, because the doctor you saw
Hmm.
originally went and got somebody else. So that
Yeah.
must be the senior doctor.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
he gave you the medicine, he gave you a diagnosis, and you were just like,
Hmm.
no, not today.
Yeah.
And
Not today. I never filled the prescriptions that they gave me. I ripped them up in my car, and I'm like, nope, this is not going to be my life. But, for people that are listening, you've got to be strong enough to be able to
yeah,
say that. You have to be strong enough to question. We were raised in an era where whatever the doctor said, you
yeah,
believed.
exactly.
Today, we don't do that. But
Yeah, how dare you?
you,
Look at you.
yes.
You were fucking
Yeah.
rude, weren't you? You were
Yeah.
supposed to be disabled because the doctor said.
Yes. Yes.
That was you rebelling against your dad again. So it's male authority figures.
Exactly.
You're not telling
That's
me what to
exactly
do.
right. That's exactly what it
It's a good
was.
job I didn't tell you were going to be healthy and live a long life. You know, I'm dying tomorrow just to show you.
Just to show you exactly. And it's so true. If you don't like what you're being told, don't listen to it. Don't take it. Turn the station on. Like we said before, you don't want to hear it. Turn the
Yeah,
station. You can turn the station in your own life. You can turn your station when a doctor tells you that you have something and this is debilitating. It doesn't have to be the end of the road. But is it going to be work? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Was it easy for me? No, it was not. But was it worth it? Oh, yeah. All day long, every day, and I would do it again today.
And you probably all know this as well, but you must look in the mirror and be bloody proud of yourself for actually saying, yeah, do you know what? I'm figuring this out one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I am so proud. And I'm so glad that I had my wacky friends back then. And I'm so glad that they didn't mind me making fun of them back then.
The good thing about that is everybody had already done it, so they were used to it.
Exactly. They were used to it. They were used to it. And then I became one of them. So then I was called the quack, and it's all good, and I'm still called a quack, and I'm okay with that too. Like, I get it, and it's all good. If it's not for you, that's fine. But at some point, when you're sick of feeling like shit and sick of not having the answers and sick of not having the life you have, you'll come see a quack like me and we'll help you. And that's the way life works.
It's funny because my friend who had really severe celiac, who was the first person I realised. And I only realised because being a hypnotherapist, you watch people's body language, is how you mirror people, is how you learn to do it. And she was talking about her celiac, and I was just like, oh, right, you're really anxious about this. And you don't actually have celiac at the moment. You don't have any symptoms. You're just really stressed about just thinking about it. And I was just like, I can fix that. And so you can get rid of celiac. No, I can get rid of the stress. The stress bit I can do. And she'd suffered from this. She's in her 30s now, and she'd suffered with this since she was about 13, 14. Had been hospitalised a couple of times, was on a shitload of drugs, and has been working with me for about 2 years now. And when she went to see the specialist who would review her every year, do all her bloods and do all of that, he said to her, oh, everything is like perfect. You're like symptom free. She's off steroids. She's off everything. And she went, yeah, I've been seeing this guy who's a hypnotherapist, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at her and went, yeah, that's nice. And didn't ask any questions, didn't make any inquiries. And her and I were laughing about it because he could probably send a load of patients to me. And I'd get rid of their symptoms. But no, he didn't even ask her what I did.
Yeah. Isn't that sad? It is so sad.
He's a specialist consultant.
Yeah.
She's been seeing for over a decade.
I had that happen with my son. My youngest son played football, tore his knee up his senior year, lost his scholarship, his life completely destroyed as a senior, right? And doing what I do, I said, I'm going to bring our biofeedback machine home. We're going to treat your knee. We're going to work on this. Then we're going to go see the surgeon. And his knee was black from the knee all the way up to the thigh. It was black. Wow. And we did one biofeedback treatment, and in 24 hours, it went from being black to yellow. Like, it doesn't go away that fast, right?
What's biofeedback then?
So biofeedback is energy medicine. We actually have a device from Germany called OnDemand, and it delivers sound energy to the meridians in the body, very much like the acupuncture points in the body are. And so it's frequency medicine. And I started treating him. He saw the surgeon. The surgeon looks at his MRI and says, we got to replace your whole knee is shot. Everything in it is tore. And we said, okay, we'll do the surgery. I kept doing the biofeedback on him. He had to wait a week or two to get surgery. And he goes in, he has surgery. The surgeon comes out and he says, I don't know what happened. This knee looks great. He's like, the only thing I did was repair his ACL. I didn't touch anything else. It's all healing. It's beautiful. Great. We go back for our final consult with him, this follow-up. And I said, do you want to know what we did? And he's like, this knee, I've never seen it heal so fast after surgery either. I said, do you want to know what we did? He's like, not really. And I'm like, well, I've been doing biofeedback. And he's like, I don't want to know that. He's like, I'm a surgeon. I have to surgically fix things. If this can get fixed without surgery, he's like, there goes my job. He's like, I don't want to know. Just keep doing whatever you're doing. It's working great. And I was like, wow.
I know. It's so crazy. I literally just, I remember like a long time ago, I was doing a lot of cycling, and there's a thing you can do in the UK. It's called the London to Paris bike ride, and you do it for charity normally.
Mm-hmm.
And I was training for that, and in the middle of training that, I was doing some sprints and stuff, and luckily I damaged the ACL, but I didn't tear it off the leg.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of wearing a knee brace, and I went and seen the doctor, who obviously diagnosed that I damaged the ACL.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I was phenomenally lucky because it didn't detach from anything.
Yeah.
And she was just like, yeah, you won't be able to do it. And I was like, well, I have to, because I'm booked, I'm going in like a few months, and I've got to keep cycling, I've got to keep training. And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, my advice is you can't. And I was just like, shit, I don't know what to do. And luckily, that following weekend, I was with a head injury client. I used to take him to a gym on a Saturday. And in there, one of the PTs was a big, massive bodybuilder, huge guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this massive leg brace on, and he's doing 200-pound squats easily, if not 250-pound squats. And
Wow.
I'm like, and I went over to him and said, look, I'm really sorry. I don't want to be rude, but
Yeah.
how the hell are you doing that sort of thing? And he'd done it playing football, soccer to you guys,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody taking out his knee. And I explained to him what I'd had and what the doctor said. No, the doctor hasn't got a clue. He said, as long as you don't twist or bend, as long as you don't directionally bend your knee like you would, he said, you won't have any problems. He said, in fact, it will heal quicker. He said, just make sure your feet stay locked into the pedals. He said, because your knee will always be turning in that direction and flexing. Mm-hmm. He said, you'll feed the ligaments everything they need. He said, but don't plant your foot and then try and turn your knee. He said, because that will cause it to hurt again. He said, as long as you just keep your... And he said, and that's how he was able to squat, because he kept his knees facing the direction of his feet.
Interesting, isn't it?
I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
He said, but if I try to turn or turn my ankles or anything like that, he said, no, my knee is I'm on the floor, he said. He said,
it's angry then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he said that's the same, and he was right. Every time I got on a bike, I was fine, as long as, because my knees were always facing in the direction of my feet. And if anything, by the time I'd got there a few months later, it was completely healed.
Wow. Isn't that crazy? And we tell people, again, you're just like me. You were told you couldn't do it. Yeah. And here you are. You did it.
Well, I one of the things I was lucky with, I was financially invested because people had donated for the fundraising.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have to give people their money back or anything like that. And I'd partnered up with a friend of mine, Haley, so she was relying on me as well. So it was one of those, just like, you've really got to figure out how to do this, But what I couldn't do was
got to figure it out.
Yeah, I couldn't go running or anything like that. I had to just stick to cycling, and But it was exactly the opposite. So I'm just conscious of taking up too much of your time. If somebody is experiencing any form of symptoms or anything like that, or looking for some lifestyle changes, what would you sort of give them a basic breakdown of start doing X, Y, and Z?
Very first thing we should always start with is diet. Look at our diet. How bad is it? Start to clean it up. Little changes can make a huge difference, So if you're not eating 1 pound of protein per body weight that you have, start working towards that. You're not going to go from eating 20 grams of protein a day to 100 grams of protein a day, but just start being conscious about adding extra protein, adding healthy, good fats, avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, those kinds of things, reducing your sugar. If you're caffeine dependent, start getting rid of a little bit of it. Don't go out and just say tomorrow, I'm not going to drink coffee.
How much caffeine do I have to stop taking?
It's easy. 1 shot glass a day. Just dump out 1 shot glass a day.
Proper barista coffee machine.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And proper beans. I grind and everything, and it's just like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were we allowed
that part? We cut that part out of the podcast, didn't we?
We did. Thank you very much, Deborah. Lots of love and affection for you. So caffeine is good.
Caffeine is good. It's all in moderation, right? You want to do it in moderation. 2 cups of coffee a day. I don't have a problem with that. We start doing 6, 8, 10. Okay, now we've got a little bit of a problem there. That's a little too much. So, doing those kinds of things, getting out, walking, getting some fresh air, moving your body, de-stressing. Don't sit in front of the computer 20 hours a day. Start moving, start getting off that thing. Stress, like you said, looking at your stress level, trying to reduce that stress, that's huge. Those things right there can go a long way. They really, really can.
Yeah, it is. It's because what I tell you, something that really frustrates me. This is so simple. Like literally,
Mhm.
I've spoken about this on a few episodes now, where that somebody did a study of shopping lists of what people purchase,
Mhm.
and it is 1973 versus 2023, and it was basically, and this was in the UK, and in 1973, 78% of everything they purchased was fresh food,
Yeah.
and 22% processed. But processed could have been anything. Could have been coffee. It could have been tea bags.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
78% of it was fresh food. So it was fruit, veg, meats. But basically, what they said is, when you looked at that, they had the ingredients to go home and cook a meal.
Yeah.
And
And you knew how to cook a meal then.
exactly. And in 2023, it was 78% processed and
Wow.
22% fresh. And
Fresh.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it was completely reversed.
Yeah.
I would
And we
just,
wonder why there's so much disease, so much cancer. I mean,
yeah.
right there.
And when
Mhm.
I say to people, just like, it's really simple, just walk for an hour every day. I can't do that. You've just watched TV for an hour. You've just been on your phone for free.
Mhm.
You can
Mhm.
walk, plug in your headphones, listen to music, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, but walk.
Yep.
Just walk. If you're not somebody that likes to go swimming, you don't like cycling, you don't like going to the gym, just go for a walk.
Yeah.
and do it in all weathers, so you experience the weather. Your body gets used to that seasonal
Mhm.
process again. Probably a bit more difficult for you when it gets to like -30, but it's it's like, but these exposures to hot and cold help. And
Yes.
but when you say that to people, you say, oh well, it will change your life 100%. It will be a 180-degree turn.
Mhm.
You just won't believe it.
It is so true. I remember my mom, I was probably 14, 15. My mom started walking for stress. She was
Yeah,
stressed at work and she needed a release. And so she started walking at night and she would go out and walk for a half hour, 40 minutes every single night. And she started doing it every single night. My mom today is 84 years old and she still walks 4 miles a day.
it's crazy.
And she loves it, but it all started as a means for her to get rid of the stress, not to lose the weight or anything like that. It was just to get rid of the stress. It's huge.
I find it one of the things. I've started waffling again when I'm supposed to be finishing up. Um, I will finish up, I promise.
Mhm.
Is this when you break it down, it's so simple that people just reject it. Can't be that easy.
Yeah, they do. Because I think we're trained to think it has to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard. The hard thing is the lifestyle
Yeah,
and the, commitment and doing something over and over again. The hard part is getting started. But once you get started, that's the easy part. It just continues. And we're creatures of habit. We do all the same things the same way every single day. It's easy for us. So once you start implementing that, it's great. And I'm not that person that says, oh my gosh, everything you do has to be organic. You can't ever have a piece of cake. No, follow an 80-20 rule.
yeah.
80% of the time you do what you're supposed to do. 20% of the time you go cheat and you enjoy it and you don't beat yourself up about having that wedding cake that's so delicious,
Mm.
because you're only going to do it once a year or twice a year. It's not that big of a deal. Enjoy it. You got to live life too. Our bodies are adaptive as long as the majority of the time it's getting what it needs.
But it's funny because you say that about cake. I've said to
Yes.
people in the past, make a cake. Go down and buy fresh
Make a
ingredients,
cake.
because two
Yes.
days later you won't be able to eat it or go stale.
That's right.
It's not going
Right.
to
Make your own cake.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you're somebody that's like, oh, yeah, but I like a cake, that's fine. Go and make a set of cupcakes. Have one every day.
Yeah.
Because the difference between that, or some muffins or whatever, is the difference between yours
Mhm.
and the ones that are in the shop. The ones in the shop can sit there for a month.
Yeah. And still taste like they were baked that day.
Yeah. Yours
Yeah.
won't last like that.
No. And if you know you're not going to eat a lot of them, then freeze them. Make a dozen.
Yeah.
Put 8 in the freezer, keep the rest out to eat. And the other thing is they're not going to have all the sugar, they're not going to have all the preservatives in it. And you can start to reduce it, but you can still have things that you love. You can add a little extra protein powder to them to make them a little more healthier too, so you don't feel so guilty about them. There's all kinds of really great things that you can do easily, and it really doesn't take as much time as you think.
And
It,
also,
you know,
because you're going to put proper butter in there and have that
yes.
fats, you will
Mm-hmm.
use less sugar. Because they
Yes.
substitute the fat by adding sugar or some sugar
Mm-hmm.
substitute. And,
That's right.
and it's just like, or concentrated fructose,
Mm-hmm.
whereas you can actually put fresh fruit in, or,
Yep.
a little sprinkle of, chocolate. It doesn't matter, because you're
Mhm.
going to be, most of that flavor is going to come from the fats, the good, healthy
Yeah.
fats that
The
your
good
body,
things for you. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
question, which is completely random and nothing to do with
Yeah.
anything we said on the podcast. I just like to ask it. If you can just, it's a magical world. We have time machines, whatever, it's just completely imagination.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go anywhere in history at any time, where would you
Mm.
go? Why would you go there? What car would you drive and take with you? And what music would you be listening to?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I would listen to 80s music,
Yeah,
70, 80 music. I love that
same
music.
there. I was
I
listening to
listen to
some
it
before we
today
started.
still. Yes, I love it. It's just uplifting and fun. Um, where would I go? Oh my gosh. I'd have to say I would go back to like the
Yeah.
1800s, and probably like the western part of the country, just the rural plains. I love being out in nature. I love being out where there's just lots of open land and not a lot of people. I just really love connecting with nature. And if I had to take a car with me, can I take any car with
Anything you
me?
want. Yeah.
Um, I would take a pickup truck with me
Oh,
because I'd be going four-wheeling. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the kind of person I am. I love being in nature, four-wheeling, connecting with the water, the streams, all of that.
perfect. Deborah, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And there you have Deborah, who, what an amazing story, and is the perfect example of just how powerful some belief in yourself and your ability can literally change your life. So I will make sure there is a link to her website in the description. Please do check her out. As always, thank you very much for watching, for listening, and for the support. It's always appreciated. And wherever you are, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed.